Okay. So just quick overview, but what I'm talking about, and I know that some people have done this already, but this is the Tower 26 swim video analysis. And you can get this information from Megan. She has a link to this, but basically, the swimmer takes the video, or if you're swimming on site, you could have a coach take a video. We take 4 different views. We take a 2 underwater views, an underwater side, an underwater view swimming towards the camera, and then 2 overwater views, one which is sort of like a bird's eye view, and then one which is a overwater front, just basically looking at your recovery and and also your entry. But you send those videos into Tower 26, we edit and analyze them, and then we discuss them in a Zoom call. This is just how I look at this. I look at filming as it should be something that's done more frequently, because I like this term, vu déjà. That's the way I kind of look at coaching, is like deja vu is if you have something that is unfamiliar, but it feels familiar, like you've been there before. But vu déjà is when you're facing something very familiar, like, coaching swimming for 20 years is pretty familiar, but I still try to look at swimming new, just because it helps me to learn things. And then the other thing I kind of picked up in coaching recently was reading some books on habits. This is from a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, but it's this principle of aggregation of marginal gains. And it's what British cycling supposedly used to make some of their biggest gains in performance. But it's, and I believe it's related to like Kaizen, which is just this philosophy of continuous improvement, making these sort of small changes. And, you see something like this and your swimming may be very far away from this, but you don't have to go from your swimming to this. You just need to make small changes along the way and do some of the things that are helping this person generate a lot of propulsion. And those small changes, if you can make small micro changes, they compound. So, he has this little chart where if you make a 1% improvement, every day for a whole year, you're like almost 40 times better. So it really compounds. If you get 1% worse, it's pretty horrible. Since we're on tautness, we're at the beginning of this is obviously we look at tautness, we look at alignment, we look at propulsion. But I really think, sometimes it's just not crystal clear. You can't just say, oh, your problem's tautness. We go through everything for everybody, because the root cause, and I think you'll see that with Dean, is it's one thing can feed into another. So like an alignment issue can cause what looks like a tautness issue. Here, obviously, this swimmer, in this position, he's sort of, we're not seeing the hips at the surface and the heels at the surface. This swimmer is right up at the surface. And that's, when we look at that, we say it's athletically relaxed. At least, Jerry will refer to that tautness. It's not like she's flexing her stomach muscles and squeezing her quads and trying to get herself. She's doing this and it's relaxed. What I like to think about is this. This is at rowing. This is actually the catch position of rowing. Like we have a catch position in swimming. There's catch position in rowing is when these blades dip in. And that's the moment that they start pushing water backwards. But one thing they do in rowing is they set their back. Now, that nice flat back, she's nice and hinged. That's a powerful position. Her shoulder blades are kind of set in that nice strong back position. So she's going to push back with her legs, but everything here is nice and engaged. What you'll see with rowers that aren't very good is they'll kind of a turtle back. Their back will be arched and they won't generate as much power. In swimming, I think it's the same thing. Like when you have this tautness, you can see his back is nice in a nice strong position. That initial catch position here, it begins with your scapulas and your back muscles. Okay, so your scaps move, but if they kind of drop off your spine because your back is not set, then you're not going to have a very strong catch position. It's the same thing in weightlifting. A weightlifter has to set their back and their scaps in a very tight and strong position. I think this is overlooked a lot in swimming. is that you need to, part of tautness is learning how to set your back. That's going to help you get up to the surface, and then it's going to help you in this next phase. And then the catch, just to remind people, you don't put a lot of force on the water in the catch. The catch is basically, Jerry calls it a setup. I think that's a good term for it, because it sets you up for more power later. What happens is, you're in this good position, you start getting that forearm facing back. You don't generate power until your arm is basically under your armpit. That's when the significant power is generated. But your hand generates more power and it accelerates. So there's hand acceleration and force. It's later in the stroke, but the better your setup or catch is, the more power you can generate later. Some of the other things, we look at are like alignment, if there's over rotation, fishtailing, picking up your head when you're breathing. A lot of errors occur there. And then, of course, we look at propulsion. And in propulsion, we can look at that front view to kind of see how the elbow position is, where you can sort of get that elbow, medially rotated, and it's in a nice, powerful position for setting up propulsion. This, as you can see here, in this really nice catch position, if you drew a straight line from her shoulder down to her wrist, that elbow is above this line here. A lot of people, that elbow will be on this line, or in a sort of bad situation, when you drop that elbow would be, if I drew that line here, the elbow's behind the line. That's sort of a dropped elbow. This is just some added information, but a lot goes on with propulsion. This is using some paddles that will give you force in newtons and kind of tell you. You could see here, this is like a left hand, the dotted lines. These straight lines are the right hand. This is a very accomplished swimmer, and they're generating different levels of force between the two different hands. So even with really, really accomplished swimmers, all of a sudden they learn, wow, I'm actually pulling a lot more on my left side than on my right side. These different colors, the green color here is propulsion that's forcing backwards. The yellow is sideways force, and the red force is downwards. So always the goal is to push water backwards, maximize that green curve. And you don't want to be pushing water in directions that don't propel you forward, which would be sideways or down. And these are the kind of things you can see with sophisticated analysis. But up here, this is sort of the catch area. You can see there's not a lot of force generated. But what you will see with inefficient swimmers is this red line will shoot way up during the catch. So they're just pushing water down, okay, which does not set you up for, you're just wasting energy pressing water down, and you're probably messing up your body position in the water, which we'll see when we look at Dean's video. Oh, this is just going back here. If you're doing chords, a good way to kind of practice, a good time to practice setting up that back. Okay, set up your back for your posture and your tautness. And that's going to help you kind of work on that catch position coming from those shoulder blades. All right. And just think of it like this rowing, set the back, do your chords. As a matter of fact, like with age group swimmers, I just won't even let them use chords until they know how to hinge and set their back up like this, because I just feel like they might build up their arms a little bit, but they're not building up a skill which is going to transfer to their swimming. So I work a lot on just this hinge motion with age group swimmers, and their back, letting them learn how to set up their back before I let them even kind of work on this propulsion stuff with the chords. And I think that could be, useful for some of you that are working on tautness. All right, let me escape out of this, I hope. Yeah,
I mean, you're totally right, because when we have these guys do the chords, you see so many different little things pop up, issues with the traps, issues with the neck, all these areas, because they don't have that flat hinged back.
It's just, I just feel it's not, I mean, if that's when you swim and you want to be present, and I think sometimes people will start off that way, and then they kind of like start talking and they're doing chords and they fall apart. I know swimmers in my group, and that I stop them, I make them go again, because I want them to focus and keep that good body position while they're working chords. Let me show you now. I'm going to switch screens. So I promise I'm not going to go too much longer. I won't take up too much more of your time.
This is amazing info, man. I mean, guys, if you have questions or anything for Jack, make sure you're writing them in or writing them down, and we'll go over them, because this is, you guys look, I mean, these guys look like the low hips, the dropped elbow. I mean, we all need to work on this kind of stuff. So make sure you're taking notes, make sure you're paying attention in detail to what Jack's saying, because this is some amazing info here. Pressing down on the water, all this stuff is just, it's amazing. So,
but Dean was very nice to let us this is one of Chris's swimmers, and Dean sent me his videos, and really I think what's nice about actually Dean's analysis is we really found something very quickly that can help him, and I actually liked when I was having my Zoom meeting with Dean, he made a really good sort of analogy that I'll show you a little bit later, but you could see we see him sort of dropping down a little bit in the water. And in these next few frames, I think you can really see what a root cause of some issues are here. But here's his head. Do you see his head all of a sudden shooting up? Oops, I'm on Twitter. Sorry. Let me go back. But if we look at his head's going to sort of shoot up. All right. And then he gets into a good breathing position. But what I see two things here. I see his head shooting up, and then I see him pressing straight down with his hand. Both of those things affect his body position. You can see those legs almost instantly sink. Head lifts. And what it does is it causes him to sort of move. His body moves a lot in the water, sort of up and down and side to side. And I'll show you what that looks like later in the video here. So it's around 3. I'm just gonna wait. I have like a little inset video. Well, oh, sorry about that. Okay, so you can see sort of Jerry up in this corner. Up here we see Jerry, and then here we see Dean. So Jerry and Dean. And this is where Dean made a really good point. He's like, he mentioned that when Jerry is swimming, it looks like Jerry's swimming down through a pipe. But if you look at, and it'll recycle here. If you look at, and I'll slow it down. Look at Dean's body kind of moving up and down, over, and the legs kind of spreading. So he would need a much larger pipe to swim through. Obviously, this, water's got a lot of resistance. It's like 700 times the resistance of air. So any kind of up and down motion or sinking is a lot of drag, and it slows you down. So again, Jerry kind of swimming through this nice pipe, and Dean kind of banging on the walls of the pipe. But that was Dean's analogy. But so for him, what we're trying to get him to work on is not applying pressure on the hands after it enters. We're also trying to get him to just kind of roll over into his breath, because if we look on the bird's eye view, the breathing position doesn't look bad. Maybe we just take a little shot here. He's not in a bad breath position, but it's what he does going into his breath. Like he comes from here, this nice head position, picks up his head, picks it way up, and then he kind of rolls into it. So that's kind of some of the power, I think, of the analysis. And actually, I really like these Zoom meetings because it gives you a chance to go back and forth with the athletes. I like it better than just doing a voiceover and sending out the video, is that you can focus in on, the athlete might see something that really he just doesn't understand what you're trying to explain to him, and you can spend some time on it. So that's kind of what we're doing with the video analysis, and my feelings on why I think don't always hope for gigantic quantum leaps after this, but small changes over a period of time are going to benefit you significantly.
Yeah, it's not getting overwhelmed with too much info. I mean, Dean, I could see 7,000 things wrong with the stroke, right?
Yeah.
but it's, you tell them all that stuff, all of a sudden it just gets lost in the weeds. You tell them one thing, and then that leads to
Yeah.
another thing, then that leads to another, and just keeping that aim small, mastering that small thing. And a lot of times mastering one little thing fixes a few other things, right?
It's that aggregation of marginal gains. Yeah.
Look at you using those big words. What? That's amazing, Jack. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Megan's with us now live. What do you got? What do you got for Jack? Grill him. Come on.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, Jack, you hit all the bullet point notes: tautness, alignment, propulsion. So, what does the athlete get with the video analysis as like a takeaway?
Yeah. So, what I do is I like to take a lot of key images. So I would go through that video, take little snapshots, draw on them. I have a little spreadsheet where I could actually show you what the scoring looks like. If we go back to this screen here, it look. I don't send this because these are just my notes, but these are sort of the key images here that I might take. I'll put all these in a final report that I'll send with some suggestions for drills and links to videos for the drills to work on these things. And then, we kind of have this very crude scoring system, but it gives you an idea of, for here, what Dean can see is like the alignment all of a sudden is a little bit lower than his tautness. And it's actually the root cause of some of his problems, is that alignment would be the head position is an alignment issue, which influences tautness. But he, in terms of his kick, he had some good scores. In terms of his kick, it was a relatively narrow kick, and there wasn't much lateral motion. So we do that, and then we kind of put together a little report with these, little breakdown and comments, and then some drills, links, and those key images, and that's what we send.
Is there any type of follow-up then?
There, as part of the package, you do get a follow-up within a certain amount of time, and then they can resubmit videos, and you can go check and see how they've improved. Yeah.
Beautiful stuff. Megan, anybody asking any questions, or Emily? Who wants to look at the questions?
I haven't seen any pop up. People were commenting about the using the band for like 2,000 or 3,000. I think that's definitely for advanced swimmers like me, Megan, Jack could handle that. But if you, Jim, of course, if you guys want to, I mean, we do bands, in the propulsion phase, and it's like 25. So you can build that up, but I do think it is a great kind of warm up to get your turnover going, focus on the front of that stroke, and you have to be taught to be able to kind of not sink. So I think it's a great warm-up drill. I used to do it before races.
Yeah, good question by Artie. Jack, what do you use for the angles that you impose on the video?
Measuring the angles, you mean on the video?
I think you meant the video. No, I think you meant the camera angles. Like, what camera angles are we taking?
Oh, okay.
Well, both. I think it might be two good questions there, but we do have a protocol of the underwater videos. I don't think most people have actually seen themselves swim, but Jack, as you said before, it's really fascinating what you can see underwater versus what you can just capture in that, bird's eye view and above the water. So it really does show us a lot, and then we can relay that. We use a couple of different programs. I think this is Huddle Technique, right, Jack?
This is Huddle Technique. So what we do is we actually have the videos on an iPad, and then we can project it on the screen for the Zoom. That's the way I do it. I use like QuickTime to use it as a screen. But what we do is we have these underwater front. That's one angle here. Actually, let me go back here. Generally, I start with underwater side. Ideally, you kind of want to have that camera far away from the swimmer. This is a little bit close because you see how much of the body. For me, if the camera is like, if somebody's swimming in an end lane and they're swimming along a lane line, I like the camera snug right up against the wall, as much distance. You can use a GoPro or an iPhone. But I like to have some sort of like either a selfie stick or some kind of GoPro stick to dunk it under. You could stick it under with your hand, but I just think you get a better shot if you have some sort of stick. So we have the underwater side, and then we do this above water. This is pretty easy. You can just do this holding it in your hand, but you just kind of, here we do this bird's eye view, and this is really good for looking at alignment and any kind of fishtailing and for hand entry. Then I move on to this underwater front view, which we looked at before. And this, you just sort of stand at the end of the lane and you film the person coming in. They can just swim from mid pool. And then the last view is generally this above water view. And here we could sort of look at the hand recovery, and sometimes you can actually get some really good shots of hand entry and head movement in this underwater front view, just having the swimmer swimming towards you. And then in terms of like drawing angles, that's just, something we just do, and we do talk about these angles in Tower 26, that you could just sort of draw angles looking at, what we look at that elbow angle. You try to get that to be 90 to 120 degrees. If it's something like 180 degrees, that's a straight line. Then you don't have an elbow angle. We also have angles that we can look at for arm recovery. And generally, what we're worried about is if like an arm's way too close to the head, it's too tight of an angle, which might be impeding their stroke. Or you can look, and sometimes there's an imbalance. One arm might be recovering differently than the other. You might have a bent arm and a straight arm. Sometimes that's not a problem, but sometimes it can cause a little bit of a lateral motion for the swimmer. So we can look at all those things from those 4 clips.
All right. So Meg, when these guys want to do this, how are they going to get started?
I'll throw a link in the chat. Hang on one second.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is about this, and, not to oversell it right now, we can't do one-on-one swims with anybody. The pools don't allow it. Like, we can do our group swims, but at least in our neck of the woods, renting a lane and watching someone swim and giving that feedback. First off, this is much more beneficial. Like, you could see so much more with these camera angles, and the coach can actually break it down than if I were just going to stand on deck and say, move your right arm in a little bit. They can actually see the way they're swimming, break it down, and have that feedback from one of our coaches. So if you guys want interested in that, training at tower26.com, and you can open it up to your friends, anybody, send it in, and let's get these guys busy, because they're doing some really good work here. And as long as the person isn't in your age group, share with any of your friends, because otherwise they're going to be swimming faster than you.